Do you believe this is going to create any kind of a policy opening for Democrats, or are they going to dig in and go after the obstruction side of the story?
I don't think either one of those things will happen, actually, Brian. I don't think that it creates a policy opening. I think, to the contrary, Democrats are likely to be even less willing to cooperate with the president than they were before, because they're angry about the result of this finding and Bill Barr's judgment, as Eamon outlined it. And I don't think that they're going to dig in on an obstruction. I think this makes impeachment much less likely. It's a political judgment. They could do it anyway, despite Bill Barr's judgment. But Nancy Pelosi has said consistently, and other Democrats have said, that they're not going to go ahead with impeachment unless there's a very strong case for doing so, unless there's bipartisan support for doing so. The conclusion of Bob Mueller to punt on the question of obstruction, and then Bill Barr to say, well, we don't think there's a prosecutable case, is something that I think will discourage both of those things. And I think we're likely to now have a more straightforward political process and political battle between Democrats and Republicans between now and November 2020.
Tony, would you agree with that? I mean, if you're a CEO watching CNBC right now and you're hoping for a big infrastructure package, or maybe the making permanent of the tax cuts, some bipartisan come together, now that this is out of the way, are you out of luck?
I don't think the healing is going to begin quite yet, Sully. I think there's still some time to run there. I mean, I agree with John. If you thought that impeachment was unlikely before, and I think that I said it on the air many times, that I thought impeachment ultimately was unlikely. But clearly, that there's still some more oversight that Democrats are going to have to do in the House. They're going to want to look at the report, try to get it, and I suspect they'll probably try to bring Mueller in to testify. But from a policy standpoint, I think the policies that we're looking at today in terms of tax policy, whatever we're spending on infrastructure right now, where we are on issues like immigration and regulations, where they are today are largely where they're going to be in January of 2021 as well. I don't expect any major changes. And that's actually, fairly welcome to some market participants.
Yeah, and a lot of that, John, would have to do with the president's stance in all this. If he says, okay, this is out of the way, I'm ticked off, but it's out of the way, let's try to get something done somewhere, that's one thing, and maybe gives us some optimism for a policy perspective. But if he digs in and maybe seeks revenge, that could push the two sides further apart. What's the more likely outcome?
Well, I don't know that it's a matter of revenge. I just think it's very difficult to find common ground. Both sides say they want an infrastructure deal. However, the Democrats want a much different deal than President Trump and his administration want, and that Republicans in Congress want. Remember, we got trillion-dollar deficits now. Democrats would like to spend a lot of money on infrastructure. Republicans simply don't want to do that. So the president's come up with this public-private thing, leveraging, on a 10-to-1 basis, private money, and Democrats are not going to go for that. I think the one thing that is a potential, I don't know if you'd call it a bipartisan achievement, but something that might get done, is the trade deal between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. It depends on how President Trump plays it. Nancy Pelosi's been fairly open to this new trade deal. I don't think anyone wants a rupture in those trade relations, and sort of the question is, does the administration actually pull the trigger on what they've talked about pulling out of NAFTA and daring the Congress not to approve the USMCA. Not sure that that's going to happen. I do think that when we get to January 2021, as Tony indicated, there will still be a trade agreement among those three countries. Just don't know which one it will be.
You know, that Steny over the weekend, Tony, at AIPAC basically said, listen, there are not 3 new congressmen on the Democratic side. There are 62. In other words, don't just focus on the stars. We've got a broad team that maybe all don't feel the same way as some more on the far left. It seemed like that was a slight olive branch from a policy perspective, no?
Well, I think he was just trying to, help people understand that it's a more diverse party than what you might get just by if you only listen to
AOC
Alexandria
or a couple of other the star freshmen.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're, from my hometown, someone like Connor Lamb, who's a very centrist kind of Democrat, he has to live in that same Democratic Party also. And I think that's what Steny was trying to say. But still, the bridging the gap on big issues, like infrastructure, Republicans have never wanted to to fund it. The one way where I could maybe see some action on infrastructure is, we've been talking, and you've been talking this morning, Brian, about a slowing global economy, right? If we see growth slowing and impacting the U.S. economy, that may, we can't do much more on tax cuts, but I could imagine then in a stimulus kind of environment doing more on infrastructure. But it would take that to do it, not just good feelings in a post-Mueller world.